Imagine being told by your mother-in-law that you don't belong in her family, that you're not good enough for her son. Now imagine smiling, walking away, and realizing that everything she dreamed of controlling, the house, the lifestyle, the business, was actually yours. She underestimated you, and that's exactly where her mistake begins. The day Evelyn told Lucas I wasn't good enough for their family, I smiled. Not the weak, defeated kind of smile, but the kind that quietly unsettles someone who thinks they have power over you. She expected me to crumble, to beg, to pack my bags and leave quietly, thinking her plan would succeed. She had no idea what was coming. It was a warm Sunday afternoon. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows of our spacious home, and I was clearing plates from the brunch table. Lucas was laughing at something his father had said, completely unaware of the storm about to hit our lives. Evelyn leaned in, her voice honeyed with faux concern. "Isabella, dear, let's not make this longer than it has to be," she whispered. "You need to leave Lucas. You just aren't the right fit for our family." Her words were like cold steel. I froze, the silverware heavy in my hands. The subtle jabs at my upbringing, the veiled insults about my sophistication, or lack thereof, had happened before. But today she didn't hide behind careful wording. Today she laid her intentions bare. "You don't have the right background, no prestigious family name, no valuable connections. A woman like you hold a man like Lucas back." I exhaled slowly, setting the plates down carefully. My silence seemed to give her confidence. She adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist and continued, curling her lips in that familiar, condescending smile. "Lucas will remarry. We'll find someone more suitable for him, someone with the right family, the right class. You understand, don't you?" It wasn't just an insult, it was an ultimatum. Evelyn expected me to crumble, to humiliate myself and step aside while she chose a better woman for her precious son. But I wasn't the kind of woman who lost silently. "I understand perfectly," I said, and then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, utterly confused by my lack of resistance. She had no idea, not a single clue. The house she adored, the one with marble countertops, gleaming floors, and those impossible-to-clean windows, wasn't Lucas's. The thriving business she dismissed as Isabella's little hobby had grown beyond anything Lucas had ever achieved. The money she thought came from their family wealth, the lavish vacations, the designer gifts, was mine, every bit of it. She had believed she had won, but in reality she had already lost. That night I didn't tell Lucas about her suggestion. I didn't need to. While she was busy plotting, she was standing in a house that wasn't hers. Our mansion, the one she paraded in front of friends and coworkers as a symbol of their success, bought by me, in my name, with my money, long before Lucas could claim it. I had allowed Lucas to play along, let his mother believe he had provided everything, but his paycheck barely touched the property taxes. The moment Evelyn decided I was disposable, she had unknowingly sealed her own fate. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn became bolder. She dropped hints, disguised as concern, to Lucas. "Isabella doesn't understand our lifestyle. Wouldn't you be happier with someone who truly fits in?" Lucas, oblivious as ever, laughed them off. He didn't see the storm brewing. Then came the final push. One evening, I overheard Lucas and Evelyn talking in the next room. Evelyn insisted, "She's not right for you. You've given her enough. It's time to move on." "And if you divorce her now," Lucas hesitated, "I'll make sure you walk away with everything," she said confidently. I nearly laughed. She thought she held the cards. She had no idea that I was about to play a hand she couldn't win. That night, as I lay in bed beside Lucas, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was amused. They had already lost. They just didn't know it. The next morning, over breakfast, Lucas scrolled through his phone, still unaware of what his mother had set in motion. "You're quiet today," he said. "Everything's perfect," I replied with a calm smile. And it was perfect, because I had made a decision. I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't fight, I wouldn't even argue. I would let them believe they had won, knowing that true victory wasn't immediate. By mid-afternoon, Evelyn sent the first message. "Lucas and I had lunch today," it read. "He agrees it's time to move forward." She thought she was in control. I let the message sit, unanswered. I wanted her to feel overconfident. Hours later, another message arrived. "Isabella, this is best for everyone." I chuckled. "Best for everyone? No, Evelyn, only best for you." I replied politely, "I understand perfectly." I could almost hear her gasp, imagining her telling friends how effortlessly she had removed me from her son's life. She had no idea that she had already lost. Later that evening, Lucas arrived home, hesitant in the doorway. "Hey, can we talk?" "Of course," I said, sitting down calmly. "I think we should separate," he said finally. I tilted my head, pretending to process his words. "Oh, is that what you want?" Lucas blinked, surprised by my calm demeanor. He had expected tears, anger, maybe a confrontation, but I only smiled. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and began packing. The look on his face was priceless. Priceless because he believed he was in control, that this was his choice. Little did he know, I was the one holding the cards. That night, I stayed at a luxury hotel, the same one Evelyn had bragged about hosting charity events in. I ordered champagne, overlooking the city skyline, enjoying the quiet. Tomorrow, Evelyn would wake thinking she had won. Lucas would think he was moving forward unburdened by me. But the truth would hit them both soon enough. Within 24 hours, Lucas began to realize something. A call from the bank, questions about the mortgage. His panic started to show. By 3 p.m., my lawyer had sent a simple message. "He's realizing the truth. Let me know when you want to respond." Not yet. I let them stew. The following evening, Evelyn discovered the reality. She called, furious. "What do you mean Lucas isn't on the house?" she shrieked. I sipped my wine. The house, the assets, the business, they were mine. Not his, not hers. She had underestimated me. The next morning, Lucas and Evelyn came to the house. I met them both with calm poise. "There's been a mistake," Evelyn snapped. "No mistake," I said smoothly. "This house is mine." Daniel's confusion turned to panic as reality hit. Evelyn's carefully curated world began to crack. She had spent years thinking she was untouchable, but she had never been in control. Evelyn's face turned pale, a mixture of disbelief and fury battling across her features. Lucas, who had spent years believing his mother's careful manipulations, finally looked at me with something resembling fear, and for the first time I saw him as he truly was, vulnerable, confused, and powerless. You can't do this," Evelyn spat, her voice shaking despite her best attempt to sound authoritative. "Lucas and I, we built this life. We provided for you." I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that's calm on the outside but lethal in intent. "Provided, Evelyn? You confused appearances for reality. You provided nothing I didn't already own. Every cent, every asset, every privilege you flaunted was mine all along." Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth, then closed it, searching for words that would undo the damage. But there were none. She had underestimated me at every turn, and now she was paying the price for her arrogance. Lucas, still shaken, finally found his voice. "Mom, I didn't know. I never realized." "Exactly," I said softly, letting the truth sink in. "You never realized because I allowed you both to believe the story you wanted to hear, and now that story has ended." Evelyn's hands trembled as she reached for the nearest chair, clutching it as if it could hold her dignity together. This isn't fair. You can't take everything. I laughed, not out of cruelty, but from the sheer irony. Everything, Evelyn? I never took anything. I simply ensured the truth was known. You built your empire on assumptions and appearances. I built mine on action, strategy, and hard work. You assumed you were untouchable, but reality doesn't favor arrogance. It favors preparation. Her eyes narrowed. Lucas, you can't let her talk to me like that. Lucas's gaze dropped. He had no words. For years, he had been the golden child in Evelyn's eyes, the one who could do no wrong. Now, even he could see the cracks. I walked over, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor, and looked Evelyn in the eye. You taught me something very important, Evelyn. You showed me that underestimating someone is the fastest way to lose. You assumed I'd be afraid, that I'd back down. But fear has never been part of my vocabulary. I play for keeps. Evelyn's breathing grew heavy. She realized that her influence, the leverage she had wielded for years, had evaporated. Every insult, every sly comment she had made, every attempt to manipulate me, all of it had been futile. Lucas finally stepped forward, his voice quiet but resolute. Mom, Isabella is right. You've underestimated her, and I didn't see it either, but I do now. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. Evelyn, who had always believed she controlled every room she entered, was now trapped in a house that wasn't hers, facing a woman she had dismissed and a son who finally understood the truth. I let the silence stretch for a few moments, letting them feel the weight of the situation. Then I spoke again, calmly but firmly. Lucas, Evelyn, I didn't come here to argue or to fight. I came here to let you know that the game is over. The illusion you both lived in, it ends today. Evelyn's voice rose, sharp with desperation. This isn't how it should be. Lucas is my son. He should... Be free from your manipulations? I interrupted softly. Yes, he should. Her face contorted with rage. She didn't expect confrontation in this form. Her entire life had been a series of calculated moves designed to control and intimidate, but with each word I spoke, the walls she had built around herself, around Lucas, crumbled a little more. You thought you could humiliate me, she hissed. You thought you could walk away from everything I've done for you? I shook my head, smiling with the confidence that only comes from knowing the truth. No, Evelyn, I never walked away. I simply let reality catch up to you, and now it has. Lucas stepped closer to me, his hand brushing against mine. She's right, Mom. Everything you believed about Isabella was wrong, and everything you believed about me, maybe that was wrong too. Evelyn recoiled, as if his words physically struck her. Lucas, how dare you? I dare, Mom. I dare to see the truth for the first time. I dare to acknowledge that Isabella has always been the one building, the one working, the one creating. I was blind, but I'm not anymore. I watched as the final pieces fell into place for them. Evelyn had tried to dictate every action, every decision. She had planned for months, schemed for years, believing that wealth and social standing gave her ultimate power. But she had overlooked one crucial element, the strength of someone who refuses to be underestimated. I walked over to the dining table, my hand brushing over the polished surface. Lucas, I never wanted this to be a war, but Evelyn needed to understand one thing. Underestimating someone is a mistake that can't be reversed. I allowed her to think she was winning, thinking that fear would control me. But I am not afraid, and neither should you be, Lucas. Evelyn's face was red now, a mix of anger and disbelief. She had built her life on control, manipulation, and superiority, but control is fragile when it's based on assumption rather than fact.
"You don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "You can't just take over everything. This life, I need it." I laughed softly, letting the sound hang in the air. "Evelyn, you may have made appearances, but I built reality. You thought power came from titles, money, and influence, but real power comes from strategy, foresight, and resilience. You underestimated me at every step. That was your mistake." Lucas looked at me, his expression a mixture of awe and relief. "Isabella, you've handled this all so calmly. I didn't realize how serious this was." "It's simple," I said. "I don't need drama or confrontation to win. I let truth speak for itself. And the truth is, you're both now facing the consequences of underestimating me." Evelyn sank into a chair, her body slumping as if the fight had finally left her. For years she had believed she was untouchable, and now she had nothing but the reality she refused to face. "You think this makes you superior," she whispered, almost to herself. "I don't think, I know. Superior doesn't come from arrogance or wealth. Superior comes from clarity, planning, and the ability to act when others failed to see the truth." Lucas reached for my hand again, a silent gesture of solidarity. "I should have seen this sooner. I should have trusted you, Isabella, but I see it now. I'm grateful for your patience." I smiled, a warmth that contrasted with the cold precision of my previous words. Patience isn't weakness, it's power, and the greatest power is being underestimated while quietly building your strength. Evelyn's face twisted in a mix of fear and frustration. She had lost, yes, but she had also learned, painfully, that appearances can be deceiving, and that arrogance is often punished by reality. I turned my gaze back to Lucas. "From here on, we decide our own lives. We are free from manipulations, from assumptions, from people who think they know our worth. That freedom is priceless." Lucas nodded solemnly, understanding at last the magnitude of what had happened. The house, the wealth, the business, all of it now stood as a testament not to privilege, but to foresight, resilience, and strategy. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice quiet now, lacking the force it had always carried. I didn't realize." "You did, Evelyn, but realizing now doesn't undo the past. It only reminds you that underestimating someone has consequences. That lesson, you just learned it the hard way." Lucas squeezed my hand gently, a silent acknowledgement that he was finally awake to the reality he had ignored for so long. And as I looked at Evelyn, standing there defeated yet still trying to maintain some semblance of dignity, I knew the balance of power had shifted completely. From that moment on, nothing would be the same. Evelyn's influence, Lucas's ignorance, and the carefully constructed illusions, they were all gone. The house, the assets, the future, everything now reflected the reality of who had truly built, who had truly planned, and who had truly won. And that person was me. The days that followed were quiet, almost eerily so. The tension that had filled the house like a storm cloud had dissipated, leaving only the weight of truth and the reality of consequences. Evelyn retreated into herself, her pride wounded, while Lucas began to see the world and me in a completely new light. "Isabella, now that everything's settled, I want to understand, how did you see through everything so clearly? Mom, she's been so calculating for years. How did you—" I smiled faintly. "Lucas, it's simple. I didn't just look at what was in front of me, I analyzed what wasn't. People like Evelyn hide behind appearances, titles, and arrogance. They reveal their weaknesses through what they fail to guard. I observed, I waited, and when the moment came, I acted. Timing is everything." Lucas nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "I wish I'd realized sooner.
I wish I'd seen the truth before all this. You weren't blind, Lucas, I said, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You were conditioned to see only what she wanted you to see. That's different, and now you have the chance to choose differently. He looked at me, a mixture of gratitude and awe. I do. I choose freedom, and I choose to stand with you. Evelyn, on the other hand, remained distant. She roamed the house like a ghost of her former self, a shadow of authority and control that had crumbled. Yet, even in her retreat, there was a spark, a defiant glimmer in her eyes that reminded me of the battles I had fought to reach this point. One evening, I found myself in the grand living room, overlooking the city skyline, the lights reflecting the life I had claimed for myself. Lucas joined me, and we stood in silence for a moment, letting the victory sink in. "Everything we've worked for, it's ours," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied, "but it's not just about ownership. It's about respect, awareness, and understanding. True power doesn't come from domination. It comes from clarity, vision, and resilience." Lucas glanced at me, his voice filled with a new maturity. "I understand now. I see why you handled everything so carefully, so deliberately. I underestimated you, and I can't make that mistake again." I shook my head, smiling softly. No one should ever underestimate anyone. That lesson, it's universal. Evelyn learned it the hard way, and I intend to make sure it's never repeated, not just for me, but for anyone who might come after us. Evelyn eventually approached, her steps tentative, as if her presence would shatter the fragile peace we had built. "Isabella, I want to apologize," she said, her voice trembling, "for everything, for underestimating you, for trying to control everything, even Lucas." I looked at her, weighing the sincerity in her tone. "Apologies are words, Evelyn. Change is action. Let this be your lesson, and let it guide how you behave moving forward. Respect and honesty, these are the foundations of any lasting relationship." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I understand, truly." Lucas stepped forward, offering a hand to bridge the gap between past grievances and present reconciliation. "We can rebuild, Mom, but only if it's genuine. No more manipulation, no more assumptions." Evelyn nodded, swallowing her pride. "Agreed. I'll try." It was a turning point, a moment of fragile truce that promised a new dynamic in our lives. But the real victory was mine, a reminder that patience, intelligence, and courage are far more powerful than arrogance and manipulation. Over the next few weeks, I solidified control over everything that was rightfully mine. Every business, every asset, every project that Evelyn had tried to claim for herself was now secure. But more importantly, I had created something stronger than wealth or influence. I had created respect, clarity, and unshakable authority. Lucas became an ally, someone who had been conditioned by the past, but now chose to embrace truth. Together, we worked on projects, discussed strategies, and built plans for the future. There was a bond that no amount of manipulation could break, a mutual understanding forged through the trials of deceit and revelation. Evelyn, while still grappling with her own pride, began to adapt. She had lost a battle, yes, but in doing so, she had also learned the value of humility and observation. For someone like her, that was perhaps the hardest lesson to learn, and yet it was also the most valuable. One evening, as I sat in my office overlooking the city lights, Lucas entered with a folder in his hand.